Hello and welcome to Unsportsmanlike Conduct, the show where two British brothers talk all things NFL. I'm your host, Don Corbs, and I'm joined by my co-host, Nick Corbs. And new today, we've got a post-divisional round mock draft.
Dom, I'm excited. The fans are loving them. The last couple of videos of these have done quite well. So, at Unsportsmanlike Conduct, we give the people what they want, and I'm excited to get involved in this one.
Everyone loves a mock draft. Let me just lay out how this is going to work. Me and Nu are going to alternate picks. We obviously don't know who the other person is going to pick. It makes the whole thing a bit more realistic with potentially some reaches if they're higher on my board or Nu's board, or potentially some people falling because they're higher or lower on mine or Nu's board and vice versa. So, and it's also going to be a bit of a mixture of maybe what we think will happen at some picks and what we would do. We'll kind of let you know as we go through it. So, Nu, pick number 1, Tennessee Titans on the clock. Where are you going?
I'm not going to overcomplicate it, Dom. There's been some rumours coming out about Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, who might be objectively higher ranked prospects on a big board, but you've got to go for the greatest positional need, the greatest positional value, and the highest person in that position is Cam Ward. Until maybe during free agency, maybe if they get a Justin Fields type player, maybe that will change. But until that happens, Cam Ward is the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree. If I'm the Titans, I am going to consider Abdul Carter, but Cam Ward has to be the play here. I think he's got the physical tools to be a great quarterback in the NFL. He's obviously not had the talent, not had the competition level coming from Incarnate World, then going to Washington State and then going to Miami. But he's a playmaker. And I think that plays in the NFL. He's got the arm strength to make all the throws you need. And I love him as a prospect. He's my 8th ranked player, Nu. Where is he on your big board? Do you know yet?
Yeah, I do. I've started, obviously it's still early in the draft process, so I've only got about 25 players currently on my big board, a few players who are outside if evaluated, and at the moment he's top 10, Dom. I haven't quite worked it out, but He'd probably be a similar position to 8. There are some players who have more talent than him, but in terms of impact players, you've got to pick him number 1 overall.
Definitely. Where would you rank him in last year's class as a quick question?
It's a great question because I think him and JJ McCarthy, I would have a similar grade on, even though they're very, very different types of players. And, maybe we're not Sam Darnold with how he played in the Minnesota game, but there were some rumors. Don't think there's any validity to those rumors about him getting traded. But I think JJ McCarthy, Cam Ward, similar tier of player. So I reckon last year, probably QB number 4, a mid-first round grade last year.
Yeah, he'd be QB4 for me as well. But in this class, he's QB1, and that's who you've got to take with the first overall pick. So I'm now on the clock at 2. And again, Nu, I'm not going to overcomplicate this massively, but I do want to lay out the Browns' problems here. The Browns are in a very weird position with not only what they need as a team, but also with their cap space. So their quarterback, obviously, they've been lost at the quarterback position for decades, essentially. Baker Mayfield gave them one good year, then they turfed him out and got Watson in. Obviously, that's been a complete disaster. Jameis, I would roll into the season with Jameis now. I'm not taking Shadur Sanders here, definitely not. I think offensive line is a massive need. Jedrick Wills and DeJuan Jones. Well, Jedrick Wills is probably a free agent this year. He really did not play that well. DeJuan Jones took a step back. They allowed the third highest pressure rate allowed. So previously I've gone offensive tackle here. But this team needs to start a turnaround, and I think Abdul Carter, the edge rusher from Penn State, is the best player to do that. He's the number 1 player on my board. Now, that's not to say he's the best player in this class right now, but I think he has the ceiling to become the best player. If you watch the what game was it? The Maryland tape. Absolutely insane. He's going to get a lot of Micah Parsons comps, and I think those are a little bit rich at this point. He does wear 11. He has moved from off-ball linebacker. He does play at Penn State. There's a lot of similarities there, but he actually looked like Parsons in that game. He was stood over the A gap, standing up. He was rushing off the edge. He was just dominating those tackles. And then the Notre Dame game where he kind of really saw his stock rise. He had 8 pressures with one shoulder. This guy's a difference maker. There might be a question of if Myles Garrett is going to stay. Even if he does stay, I think Abdul Carter can turn around, can add some juice to the defense and really begin another rebuild in Cleveland.
Dom, I think it's a good pick. He's my number 2 player behind Tesoro McMillan, who I love dearly. But I think, Dom, you saying Micah Parsons is not lazy helmet scouting at all.
No.
Their career progression is so similar. And obviously, if you watch the Maryland tape, a few of his Big Ten games, which might be harder for a few of our fans to get hold of, but if you watch the college football playoff, which is readily available on YouTube for anyone to watch, he dominates. You don't even need to know who he is. Number 11 is there on every single play. So, Dom, even though I think a lot of Browns fans might be screaming at you for a quarterback here, I think that is a good pick.
Yeah, I'm not touching a quarterback here. But then talking about a quarterback, new as a New York Giants fan, what are you going to do at 3?
So, Dom, here is a bit of like how you said earlier, what do you think should happen versus what you think will happen? And here is a mixture of the two, because I'm a lot higher on this player than you are. I'm not quite as high as him as number 3, but at the current moment, because I can't predict free agency, I think you've got to go Shedeur Sanders for the Giants.
Okay, all right, interesting.
No, he obviously has problems with his arm strength. I think it's the big one that's going to get a lot of attention over the draft cycle. But I actually don't think that's a problem. I think he's got very good accuracy. I think he's got good athleticism, able to extend the play, and he's a great leader, Dom. Obviously, like you said, with Cam Ward from Miami, he'd be a QB4. Shedeur Sanders would probably be QB5 or 6, but it is not the same draft. It is not the same situation. Brian Dable and Joe Shane, this is the last year of their contract, effectively. If they don't make the playoffs, they are gone. They have to do everything they can to win, and I think Shedeur Sanders is the best chance they have to win. The Giants currently don't have a QB tenured on their roster. Shedeur Sanders has to be the answer.
Yeah, I think this is definitely going to be Shedeur Sanders. They might need to trade up maybe with the Browns if the Raiders really like him, but we'll do trades in another mock, basically. But for now, at 3, if Shedeur Sanders is there, look, I've not come around to Sanders as a prospect. I would not draft him inside the top 10 because I just don't think he's going to have a ceiling whereby he's going to ever really be a top 10 quarterback in the league. He can definitely create from the pocket. He's a pure pocket passer. And he can throw with nice anticipation when he's kept clean. Question if the New York Giants offensive line can keep him clean. But like you say, Newt, they need to draft a quarterback or they're absolutely cooked. I agree with you, the arm strength isn't quite there. He holds onto the ball for way too long. There is a massive lack of athleticism. I think he's got the baseline. He's not like a Joe Burrow or a Jared Goff, but he's not like a value add in the run game, not going to make defenders miss. And there is the question of the Sanders circus. Do you want to have Deion Sanders dragging your team through the mud every time you lose a game or Shedeur has a bad game? I don't know, but I think that is the right pick there, all things considered. Patriots now, me on the clock. Oh, this is so hard. This is kind of a very good position for the Patriots to be in here. You've got Travis Hunter on the board. You've got Tetairoa McMillan on the board. But I'm kind of tempted to go offensive line almost. They really need an offensive lineman. And I do think that Mike Vrabel, as the new head coach, who kind of is a pseudo GM, he likes to have that power, will want to build that team through the trenches like he did in Tennessee. He drafted Peter Skoronski, who's another guard, offensive tackle, kind of tweener with shorter arms, in the first round only 3 years ago. So this is a bit more of a prediction pick. I would probably go with Tetairoa McMillan here, but it is, to be fair, a bit of a deeper wide receiver class. I don't think it's that deep at offensive line, particularly after the first round. There's quite a lot, but you're not going to get one in the second. So this is a bit rogue, but I'm going to go Will Campbell here to protect Drake May. It's what I can see this team doing.
Dom, I don't hate it. He's my number 1 tackle, position of need, position of value. Protect Drake May, protect your assets. I don't hate it. So now, me with the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Easy, come on.
It is easy. It has to be Travis Hunter.
Yeah. Okay? I don't think I've done a mock where it's not been Travis Hunter.
I know, personally, I'm not as high on Travis Hunter, as the rest of the draft community are. I question if he can play both ways. I question the value of doing both. I question the value of him only playing one. But all things considered, this team just needs a spark. It needs a character, a motivation, something to be excited about, which there haven't been in Jacksonville since Blake Bortles, if you count that. So Travis Hunter, I think, has to be the pick here.
Yeah, I'd go Travis Hunter here 100 times out of 100, genuinely, for the Jags at 5 if he's on the board. I think I'd play him at corner full time. I'd play him at wide receiver for 10 to 15 snaps a game. I think that's how you get the most value out of him. I agree with you, New. He can't play both ways full time. It's not possible in the NFL. I need people to understand that. It is not college. The playbook is 3 times, 4 times, 5 times as thick, especially when you play defense. So, that way you do get to have the best out of Travis Hunter. If he plays wide receiver full time, he's not going to be able to play corner at all. It just doesn't work like that. So if you play him at corner, he will be able to play some wide receiver. Like you say, this team needs a spark. Easy pick. Raiders at 6.
Oh, I like the way
So
the board has fallen for the Raiders here, Dom. It looks good.
I love how the board is falling here for the Raiders as well, and I'm just going to get up their team needs because this is I
Well,
think
you can
an
list
easy.
every position, Dom. Team needs for the Raiders as long as my arm. It doesn't really matter.
True. They do have per PFF QB, running back, wide receiver, cornerback. And I mean, obviously, I completely agree with all of those. I think the biggest of those is wide receiver. So I'm going to draft Tetero McMillan, the wide receiver from Arizona. At the moment, their starting wide receiver trio, and this is obviously pre-free agency, is Trey Tucker, Jacoby Myers, Terrence Marshall, DJ Turner. Like, that is
God,
unbelievably
I haven't
terrible.
heard that name in a while. God.
I know, that is unbelievably terrible. And I just think Tetero McMillan is an absolute baller. Like, he has such a great physical profile. He's 6'4", 215 pounds. He can play out wide, but he plays like a 6 foot 200-pound wide receiver, basically. He moves so well. I'd get him running in breakers. I'd get him in motion. Like, this guy can be your CD Lamb-esque wide receiver, which you desperately need. Him next to Brock Bowers. Yeah, fine. Who's throwing him the ball at quarterback? Only the Lord knows at this point. But I think even with anyone at quarterback, they can do something with Tetero McMillan and Brock Bowers.
Dom, I think that's a good pick. So now me with the Jets. The Jets have just recently hired Aaron Glenn as their head coach.
Good shout.
As of just a couple minutes ago. And, this is a defensive-minded team. And the best thing about the draft is make your strength stronger. The best thing about the Jets is their defense and their interior defense with Quinn Williams. Mason Graham is the number one player on a lot of people's boards. For me, he's number 3. And for me, this is an easy pick.
Yeah, that's exactly who I would have gone with as well, now. Like, for me, Graham is a genuine pass rusher up the middle. I think him next to Quinn Williams will be the best interior defensive line tandem immediately. And they also have loads of free agents. Javon Kinlaw's a free agent. I think Solomon Thomas is a free agent. So they're losing bodies there. And this year, they didn't have Jermaine Johnson because he got injured. And I know he's an edge player. But nevertheless, losing a player like that did make the whole defense take a step back this year. And I completely love the shout as well that Aaron Glenn is now the head coach, and he'll want to again draft through the trenches. He played for the Jets. He's gone through a Jets rebuild, and I think you've got to make a statement and go for a big lad in the middle in Mason Graham.
Yeah.
So me at 8. Okay. This I've been looking forward to doing this all day. I think now. Basically, the Panthers need defensive line, and previously I would have gone Abdul Carter about 3 weeks ago before the playoffs, before he really kind of went stratospheric. Now, there's 2 names that I'm considering here at 8, and that's James Pierce Jr., the edge from Tennessee, and that is Mike Green, the edge from Marshall. Now, which one am I going to go with? Am I going to go with James Pierce or am I going to go with Mike Green? James Pierce, for clarity's sake, is my 11th ranked player, and Mike Green is my 15th, but I'm going to go with James Pierce Jr. here, the edge rush from Tennessee. I love James Pierce Jr. This time last year, basically, kind of in the off-season, after the draft, he was the kind of number 1 overall pick, heir apparent. He didn't quite live up to that hype because he is a little bit on the lighter side, but this guy is an explosive pass rusher. He's got active hands, great bend. He's strong against the run and the pass. He can stay on the field for all 3 downs, even despite his weight concerns. He has a 22.2 pass rush win rate, which is really good. And he's really long. Yeah, he's a bit light, but he engages heavier offensive linemen so well. I think this guy's actually kind of been slept on. It's almost like he's gone so out of fashion since this time last year that now people don't really want to talk about him being as good as he is. I love James Pierce Jr. here at 8 to the Panthers, a team that needs defensive line juice.
Dom, it's a good pick, but I think there is a little bit of buyer beware with James Pierce Jr. because he was a player that was, you're right, the number 1 overall pick, nailed on, Better's favourite. And then, during the season, was almost a 2nd-round value prospect. And now towards the end, he's shot back up draft board. So I think it's important to evaluate him as a whole player and not just as a trend, which I think you're doing fairly. But I think it's a bit of buyer beware for anyone to do super high or super low on James Pierce Jr. Me with the New Orleans Saints.
I always struggle with this team.
And here is going to be a bit of my personal pick rather than I think will happen, because recently, the more I've been evaluating, I'm really falling out of love with Luther Burden. I'm really not liking what I'm seeing, and it's really hard for me to get excited about him as a prospect. But who I am excited about as a prospect? I can help with that pass game, can help out Chris Olave, can help out Rashid Shaheed. It is Tyler Warren, the tight end out of Penn State.
I already scrolled down
to the Colts all during the season. And I'm only getting higher on him as the time goes on. I think he's a perfect fit for New Orleans. He can help out that pass game, protect Olave, no longer have to do deep balls and Hail Marys, can really develop that short and intermediate passing game that the Saints so desperately need. Tyler Warren's the pick for me.
Yeah, I did that in my last mock as well. Like when you need everything and when you're in such bad cap hell, you're just going to go best player available. And yeah, I mean that's the thing is that if they didn't re-sign Alvin Kamara, which I find so bizarre, then it would have been an Ashton Genty pick because that is the best player. But Tyler Warren is an offensive difference maker. Yeah, he plays tight end officially, but he can play anywhere. A bit like a Brock Bowers type. Obviously, Bowers is a better receiver, but I think Tyler Warren is almost more dynamic because he's a lot heavier, he's bigger basically, so he's more of a traditional tight end, that mismatch weapon, and he can be moved all over the offense. I love that pick. I love Tyler Warren, so that's an easy one for me. The Bears are a team that I really struggle with now because they need offensive line.
You have to go line. You have to go line.
It has to be
back in the
line.
league.
It has to be offensive line. Now, I love Kelvin Banks Jr. I think people have kind of mellowed on him a little bit. He's my first ranked offensive tackle at the moment.
Oh, interesting.
People do question if he has the arm length to hold up at tackle and might move him to guard, which kind of in this instance works quite well for us because the Bears need interior offensive line more than they need tackles. So I think I am going to draft Kelvin Banks here, but what that allows us to do, yeah, he's technically a tackle and I would play him at tackle, but what it allows the Bears to do is to essentially get their best 5 players out there, which is really important when you've got now the new head coach, Ben Johnson. They have an amazing offensive, still do, but Ben Johnson had an amazing offensive line in Detroit. That was a massive reason as to how and why they called certain plays, because they had the protection. And I question how well his scheme is going to work if they don't bolster the offensive line, basically. And Kelvin Banks, I think, is a really, really good player. He's experienced now. He's got 40 games under his belt, only allowed 1 sack and 8 pressures, including the playoffs, even when Ohio State absolutely dog-walked the Texas offensive line in the playoff game. He's got a great base. He does lack the ideal height. Like I said, only 6'4", might have slightly shorter arms, might be questions about if he should move to guard. But I think that works in the Bears' favour here. It gives them positional flexibility. If one of their tackles does get injured, Kelvin Banks can shoot out there. It just allows them to get their best 5 offensive linemen out there now.
Yeah, don't mind. That's a great pick. And unfortunately, you just took my pick for the Niners because Kelvin Banks is my number 2 tackle behind Will Campbell. Will Campbell's the number 1 for me. So that's an easy pick for me then. I'm going Josh Simmons, the tackle out of Ohio State. Brock Purdy is a limited quarterback and he's about to get a bag very, very soon. You've got to protect your golden goose. Trent Williams isn't getting any younger. Obviously, Puna was a great pick this draft, but Josh Simmons is a great tackle. He had a great postseason, great college football playoff. I believe he should stay out there as tackle. Good height, good strength. He is the number 2 tackle for me. No, sorry, number 3 tackle for me, rather. And even though I love Kelvin Banks, I think he fits in pretty well for the Niners.
Yeah, I mean, Josh Simmons, if he played a full season at the level that he started this season, he'd be a top 5 pick. Like, you're kind of almost getting an injury discount with Josh Simmons, which I'm surprised he came back to school, really, because with the way he was looking, he only had 5.5 games of tape in 2024 before he unfortunately tore his ACL. The talent he did play against, though, are Akron, Western Michigan, Marshall, Michigan State. And even in the Marshall game, he didn't go against Mike Green, the other edge rusher that I mentioned earlier, because Mike Green was rushing from the other side and Josh Simmons was on the left. So, I like Josh Simmons. I think it's definitely where the 49ers would go with the trenches when they need guard, they need tackle, like they need to revisit that basically and try and maybe even find a Trent Williams replacement depending on how long he's got. So I love going offensive line there. And I like the Josh Simmons pick as well. I think tackles are going to be a bit of a premium actually in this draft. I don't think there's like a top one new, but I think there's a good bunch essentially of like 7 really that I think is going to go in the first round. So new. This is what happened last time when it was the Cowboys at 12 because Ashton Genty is on the board. But I
surely, Dom, it's got to be the pick. It's made in heaven.
So last week when I did my this mock draft solo, I didn't go Ashton Genty. I went Luther Burden. I think though that it is a class where you can get a wide receiver in the second that I would still really like, and I think some people here might be kind of pounding the table for Emeka Egbuka. A more of a zone beater might be a really good compliment to CeeDee Lamb. He'd be a rock solid wide receiver too. But would you rather have a wide receiver 2 or would you rather have Ashton Genty at 12? So this time, I am going to go with Ashton Genty.
It's the right pick.
And I mean, Ashton Genty, as you know, Nu, and as everyone else listening to this will know, was probably the best player in college football this year, I think. If I had a Heisman vote, it would have gone to Ashton Genty. He had 2,287 rush yards, first in college football, 7.3 yards per attempt, first in college football, 1,695 yards after contact, obviously first, but if you just took his yards after contact, so just those 1,695 yards, that would be good for second total rush yards in the FBS. Like, Ashton Genty after contact is basically RB2. And then 124 missed tackles forced, first in college football. Like, this guy, yeah, he plays running back, but he's a difference maker. And the Cowboys need that. Like, this is something that Jerry Jones would definitely do after what he did with Ezekiel Elliott. So I think this is what will happen. And in this scenario, what I would do.
Yeah, Tom, I agree. I think Ash Genty, if positional value wasn't included, would be one of the best, if not the best player in this draft. Yeah. He is a game changer.
He's blue chip.
Yeah, Dallas need a game changer. I don't think another receiver is going to make as much of a difference as Ash Genty will. They need an influence maker, and that is what he is.
Yeah, nice. And then the Dolphins at 13 new.
So, Dom, unfortunately, the best tackle prospects off the board, which is kind of frustrating because you got to protect Tua. But here, I don't think the positional need lines up with value. And I think when that happens, just go best player available. I'm surprised he's still here. Will Johnson, the corner out of Michigan, has to be the pick here. He is a better corner than Travis Hunter. I think most people in the draft community believe that. He's such a valuable player. He was a great player on the Michigan National Championship team, great player this year, despite the fact that Michigan had a worse year all around. Will Johnson is a top 5 player, number 4 on my board. And the fact they fell to 13, even though it's not a massive positional need, I think you just got to take best player available.
I think you're going to get a bit of flack for that one, new, because they've got Jalen Ramsey and
Jalen Ramsey's ancient. He's aging. He's already been on the Jags, already been on the Rams. What is he, 31, 32 now?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, he's no spring chicken, definitely. But like, what I've got the Dolphins as needing is offensive line. I would have gone Amon Membu there, and I'll talk about him when he does eventually go.
So do you think that he's a similar tier prospect to Will Johnson?
No, I don't. If you're going BPA, it would be Will Johnson, but I think there is, and obviously you're not always drafting for need in the draft. Like, that's not what the best teams do. But like, the way the Miami offense functions is by having a good offensive line, and I don't think they had one this year. And Tua is a quarterback that needs that. So I think that obviously Will Johnson's a good player, and you can't you can't hate that pick. But I think there was probably other ways that I would have gone. I would have probably gone Amon Membu. I might have even have gone with the Malachi Starks because Poyer and Holland are free agents. Obviously, they might re-sign one or both, and that would change. But I don't know, Nu. I don't know. Get ready for some hate in the comments of that one. Nu, your ball knowledge is catastrophic.
My catastrophic ball knowledge might be playing me again. But, Dom, I just think you got to go best player available. You look at teams like the Eagles, like the Ravens, who consistently go BPA. The Eagles didn't need defensive interior and they drafted Jalen Carter. They didn't need defensive end when they drafted Derek Barnett. You always go best player available. And I think when a player of that caliber is staring you at the face, I get Malachi Starks. I do get that. But I just don't think that tackle prospect is going to make much of a difference maker as a potential perennial all-pro that Will Johnson is.
All right, fair enough. So I've got the Colts now, and with Tyler Warren off the board, I'm in a bit of a pickle here. I don't like Colston Loveland enough to draft him this highly at all. I'm looking at edge. I'm looking at Mike Green. Obviously, they've got Latu last year, and they finally got rid of Gus Bradley. I can't remember off the top of my head who their new defensive coordinator is, because that does kind of determine what I think they will do. Obviously, they also need defensive back. I'd be tempted by Malachi Starks here, but it kind of depends on what scheme they're running, really. This is an ugly spot. What would you do here, Nu?
It's really hard, Dom. It is really hard because obviously, Latu last year. I would probably go Colston Loveland personally. I still think you got to help out. You got to help out Anthony Richardson with those easy, intermediate, short level throws, which I think Colston Loveland can give. Maybe even Luther Burden, but I don't know. I think it's a very hard pick here. But personally, I'd go Colston Loveland.
So I looked it up while you were talking. The Colts defensive coordinator is Lou Anarumo, which I like. I think that guy was forced out the building unfairly in Cincinnati because they had no talent defensively. So obviously the defense didn't play very well. does Lou Anarumo need or use a Malachi Starks? Because that's the best player on the board, I think, at this point, is Malachi Starks. I think he's a blue chip player, but he plays safety.
Well, they dropped Malik Hooker a couple of years back. I think Malachi Starks is a better player. Malachi Starks could be a good pick here, Dom.
I'm going to go with Mike Green, the edge rusher from Marshall here. I absolutely love Mike Green. He's 6'4", 250 pounds. He is what you're looking for when you're drafting an edge. I think this class really does lack that prototypical athletic, explosive edge rusher. And he is that. He's got, as I said, great explosiveness, great agility. He's a finisher. He's athletic as hell. And he plays at Marshall, but he had no drop-off in production when he played against Power 4 opponents. He had this spin move versus Ohio State, which was just beautiful to watch. And he has a 20.1 pass rush win rate, which is really good. He's got a good stable of pass moves. His inside counter is killer. And he's a high school wrestler, which I love. I love when trench players are wrestlers.
The Quentin Nelson, the classic.
The Quentin Nelson. It just gives them a great core. And look, there's questions about his competition level, even when he did play against teams like Ohio State. But I think the Senior Bowl is going to be massive for him. He's accepted his invite. He'll be there. That's 2 weeks from now. And I think he's going to tear it up. And I think he's going to go. I think it might even come to a point where him at 14 is just not realistic. 15 new Falcons. This is a very interesting team.
This is interesting, Dom, because the Falcons have a lot of needs, but I don't think there's any that pressing there. I think they're a classic 8-9, 9-8 team, which I think is almost the hardest to draft for.
I think they need edge.
I think they need edge.
Mike
Obviously,
Green would have been the pick.
They're very low in pressures. But I'm going to give them wide receiver number 2 behind a bona fide stud in Drake London. I'm going to give them Luther Burden. Nice. Michael Penix Jr., I only played one game, of course, but, you got to give your rookie quarterback all the tools he needs to succeed. And you've got Bijan, you've got Drake London, and Luther Burden would be a great complement to that.
Yeah, I actually really like that pick. I think Luther Burden is a fantastic complementary piece next to Drake London, who's a big-bodied, kind of contested catch, ex-receiver. Luther Burden is that perfect Z receiver. He's like a smaller, like a watered-down Malik Neighbors, just dynamic. You can put him anywhere. Him and Bijan Robinson in the backfield would send defenses spinning. And I think it's fantastic to build around their young quarterback. Well, not so young.
But he's about 26 now, yeah.
But relatively speaking, their young quarterback in Michael Penix, and he was at his best when he had all those weapons in Washington.
Yeah, Jalen Polk, Rome Odunze.
So, run it back offensively. Cardinals at 6. Good grief. This team, man, this team needs defensive juice. Really, it needs defensive line, I think. Now, Mikael Williams is a player that I am becoming less and less high on throughout the draft. Kenneth Branch, yeah.
I'm getting high on him as it goes on. I like him.
I quite like Aman Membu here, maybe as a tackle. Even though he's 6'3", I think he's more of a tackle than some of these other offensive linemen are, like Josh Connolly Jr. from Ohio State. This team. They did draft, what was it, like Darius Robinson with like the 16th overall pick last year, and he was injured, so missed most of his time.
Can't really grade him as a pick, really.
No. Oh. Yeah, you know what? I'll go Mikael Williams here as more of a kind of consensus what I think would happen if the board fell this way type of pick. And I'll talk about Mikael Williams because he's my 17th ranked player, so it's not like a massive reach, but he used to be like my 12th as of like a few days ago, really. So Mikael Williams is 6'5", 265 pounds. He's got really high upside. He's shown flashes like he could be the best player in this draft class. Great wingspan. This guy's got vines for arms. Like if you look at a video of Mikael Williams, like when he's warming up in pregame, like his arms like touches like kneecaps. Like he's literally like a Pokemon or something. And he's really good as a run defender and he's developing as a pass rusher. But he's a lottery pick. I don't think he's ever really put it together as a pure pass rusher. He only had 26 total pressures. Only had 26 total pressures this year, 5 sacks. He had 26 total pressures last year and 6 sacks. He had an injury this year, so that didn't help him. But even when he was on the field, he didn't look like a difference maker, which is what his athletic profile would suggest. Like he had no sacks and like 1 pressure against Notre Dame. Like that's not good enough, really, to warrant a particularly high pressure. He's only got an 11.2 pass rush win rate. I think he kind of almost projects more like a Tyree Wilson than a Trayvon Walker if we're going for like super athletic, super tools. I'm not saying they play the game in the same way, they don't, but in the line of here's an athletic freak, let's see what he can do. Tyree Wilson is just beginning to put it together now in year 2, year 3. Trayvon Walker is actually pretty decent, but I think at 16 you can't hate that.
Well, Dom, he's a player, the combine, not what it used to be, but he's going to blow up the combine. I could see him running a ridiculously fast 40 time, jumping out the gym. Probably won't do too well on the bench press, but in modern day that doesn't really matter. Here's someone post combine who I could see really rise up boards. I really like his athletic potential, but the production should be there. When you're that much faster, quicker, and bigger than everyone else, why aren't you doing better?
Well, I don't think he'll bench with those arms.
No, he'll probably get about 5 or 6 reps. Okay, now me with the Bengals. It's going to be cut and paste from what I said about the Falcons. T. Higgins is going to be gone, and I think Emeka Egbuka is a perfect number 2 to the opposite Jamar Chase. Obviously the Bengals have such bad defensive woes. Trey Hendrickson obviously led the league in sacks, but the Bengals defense was atrocious. There's a reason why a Triple Crown winner didn't make a playoff appearance, and that is because of the defense. And I think it's important to recognize that. But here, positional value, where Emeka Egbuka, I think, is perfect there at pick 17. I think it fits perfectly.
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously a lot of Bengals fans are going to be pounding the table there for offensive line, particularly guard, and definitely defensive line, like maybe Kenneth Grant as a bit of an anchor in the middle, maybe Shamar Stewart as he's down here as an edge, but he's more of an interior defensive lineman for me at 6'9" or whatever, but I'll talk more about him if he goes. But I think you've seen the Bengals be able to compete. They should have made the playoffs this year when they had 2 great receivers, which is what this offense thrives on. And I think losing T. Higgins would have a massive impact on the offense. And I think adding Emeka Egbuka, while maybe not as impactful in a vacuum as a defensive line addition would be, but I think he'd be like a force multiplier. Essentially, it allows Jamar Chase to not have to be the only guy on the Bengals offense, because apart from him, it's like Andre Yoshivas, and then Jermaine Burton is unfortunately just not stepped up.
Your guy, Dom.
My guy, honestly, my guy. What a shame. So talented. But I like that pick. Seahawks at 18. I mean, look, the Seahawks need a lot of stuff, but this has to be offensive line. And it kind of has to be interior offensive line, which kind of changes things for me, because despite Amar Membu being 6'3", I think he is a tackle. More so than a Josh Connolly from Ohio State is. Who else is on the board? Wyatt Millam. Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be a Josh Connolly Jr. here. The
what
offensive
a
tackle.
Malachi Starks is what I'm saying. This is the theme of the
was
draft.
Malachi Starks on the board still?
Malachi Starks is still on the board.
Sugar. I might have fumbled that. I love the idea of Malachi Starks in this Mike McDonald defense. It would be so good. That's the kind of team I want Malachi Starks to go to. A team that's going to utilize his positional flexibility, his just playmaking ability. I've not compared him because they're not the same player, but a bit like the Ravens safety
Carl Hamilton.
A bit like Carl Hamilton, they're not the same player. They do not play the game in the same way. I'm not comparing how they play, but just the sense that he can be like a defensive Swiss Army knife. You can put Malachi Starks all over the formation. I think Mike McDonald is the perfect defensive-minded head coach to know exactly where and how to use him. But I have gone Josh Connolly, and I'm going to stick with that because, I mean, the Seahawks have allowed the most pressures in the league this year. I can get the exact figure out. And it was
is it not the Bears? Or was Bears most sacks?
So PFF have allowed, by PFF's numbers, and different kind of platforms will chart pressures quote unquote differently. So it's not to say that this is the be all and end all, but we all know just by watching the games that the offensive line was bloody awful. They allowed 223 pressures per PFF, which was first by 11, first by a long, long way. All of their backup offensive linemen are free agents, including Laken Tomlinson. So I think Josh Connolly Jr., he's down as a tackle. I think he can play as a guard, definitely. And again, I think there's a possibility where, you can move the players that you already have around. He is, for me, where is he? Josh Connolly Jr. He's my 25th ranked player. So yeah, there's a little bit of a reach here, perhaps. But I mean, you're just going for need. You've only got a few more years with, oh my God, Seahawks quarterback.
Geno Smith.
Yeah, Geno Smith. You've only got a few more years of Geno Smith, given he's not the youngest player. You cannot have your offensive line trot out there again like it was. I think he's really athletic. He's got great movement skills for his size, 6'4", 315 pounds. Light feet. He's got his lateral agility is really good. And he's got a great career trajectory. He's just got better every year. He only allowed 9 pressures and 1 sack, 4th best pressure rate allowed in this class at 1.82%. he's what this team needs. And I'd kind of kick him into guard, or I'd look at kicking one of the other tackles into guard, because you just got to get your best 5 out there. 19 new, the Buccaneers.
Well, Dom, it's got to be Malachi Starks here. And I understand safety is not a position of need for the Bucks. They always got Antoine Winfield Jr., but defensive versatility is so important. You bring up Kyle Hamilton. Imagine having 2 Swiss Army knives that control both halves of the field. You can blitz them, send them deep, strong, free safety. And also the Bucks, Liam Cohen's coming back. The offense is okay. The offense can take a break. Defense needs building up. And Malachi Starks is by far and away the best player on the board currently. The fact that I slipped out the top 10 is just as much as my fault as it is your fault, Dom. Probably should have gone to the Dolphins in hindsight, but Malachi Starks to the Bucks.
But that's it with Malachi Starks. Like, Malachi Starks for me is my 10th ranked player. Like, I think he's a blue chip player. I think him, Ashton Genty, who else? Abdul Carter. These guys are the blue chip guys, right? But it's the positional value of a safety. How highly is a team going to draft a safety? And I think there is a definite possibility that he slides like this, 100%. And especially one that isn't really going to be used like a Kyle Hamilton or an Antoine Winfield Jr. Yeah. But I mean, at the moment this year for Georgia, he lined up 190 snaps in the box, 252 at slot corner, 385 at 3 safety. And he manned up against Luther Burden in the slot in 2023. Like, this guy is basically more
modern
like
safety.
Brian. Yeah, he's a modern safety. Almost a bit like a Brian Branch, again, less of a blitzer, but able to just eradicate a team's wide receiver from the slot. And that's super valuable. It allows you to, again, have other players playing the role that they want to play. You don't have to move a corner in if you're really getting torched on the outside or the inside. So I like Malachi Starks. I love him at 19. It's great value. Broncos. Look, everyone will be saying Colston Loveland here as the tight end.
I don't like the receivers, Dom. I don't like the receivers.
Sorry?
I don't like the receivers at this value.
I do like the receivers at this value. I'm going to go.
I swear to God, if you go Alec Alumine, or we're going to have some words.
I think you still might hit this. I'm going to go with Matthew Golden, the wide receiver from Texas. Golden has probably risen the most out of almost anyone, up there with Abdul Carter, with the way that he's played this year. He has been electric. He's what this Broncos team needs. I think he's a great complement to Cortland Sutton. I think he can take the top off a defense. His route that he ran on 4th and 13 against Arizona State basically send the game to overtime. It might have even been overtime. It was just an amazing route. And I think Bo Nix needs the weapons. I think Matthew Golden will be a great one. They've already got Cortland Sutton. I think getting rid of Tim Patrick and Jerry Jeudy in the offseason last year was a massive mistake. And I think you've seen that Bo Nix is a good enough quarterback that you're completely happy to continue to roll with him, absolutely. But he's also a quarterback that I think that needs weapons to get the best version of him, which I don't think is a knock. I think the vast majority, basically every quarterback in the league, barring the top 4 guys, need that. So I think I like this pick.
I'm not sure, Dom. Until the back end of the season, he wasn't even the best receiver on his own team. No, I think Isaiah Bond.
I'm not a Bond guy. Bond has not had a good year.
Well, I do admit that I think Bond and Pat and Cortland Sutton rather aren't a good 1 and 2 pairing. They wouldn't complement each other that well. So maybe Matthew Golden's a better pick for that situation. I'm still not. Jury's still out for him for me, but I don't hate the pick. Okay, the Steelers here at 21. So Dom, this is going to be my big draft prediction. We can get Paddy to clip it now.
Oh God.
This is only based on rumors, not based on my personal valuation. I think one of Will Howard, Jackson Dart, Riley Leonard, and Carl McCord will be at the end of the first round pick. Because they've been ranked as top 5 in the draft. You always see these players rise up boards, especially Cade Klubnik and Drew Alley going back to university. I am very void. I think these guys are going to get massively overdrafted. It's not my pick for now. I'm not going to be that much of a hot take merchant. It's just a prediction for later on in the draft.
All right, okay.
Now, with the Steelers, I cannot think of a more Steelers pick than Trevon Revell, the cornerback out of East Carolina.
I was thinking of Benjamin Morrison, who's like a very similar, injured.
Yeah, big, lengthy, almost Joey Porter-esque, not quite the same player, but I think he's Steelers through and through. Big, physical, he's a lighter frame, only 190 pounds, 6'3", but I think he can blanket these bigger receivers that are coming into the NFL, and more than anything, he is just classic. He's just a classic Steelers player.
Yeah, I would have gone with Benjamin Morrison there, another injured cornerback. You're kind of getting an injury discount on both Benjamin Morrison and Siobhan Revell. Siobhan Revell tore his ACL in preseason, I think, and he was a big name going into this year, so it was a real shame for him. He's also going to be going to the Senior Bowl, I think, or East West Run. He's going to one of the bowls,
one of those ones. Yeah,
he's not going to be able to compete still. He'll obviously be all right to go by the beginning of the season. But I like corner there for the Steelers 100%. Maybe not Siobhan Revell, might be a bit early for me, but I like corner. They needed someone that can play opposite Joey Porter Jr., so I like that. And they technically need wide receiver, but they drafted Roman Wilson last year, who basically played 2 snaps. So we'll see. The jury's still out on Roman Wilson. 22 Chargers. No, get ready, because
no. What are you doing?
I'm drafting Elikai Armano. I'm doing it. He's my 19th ranked player.
That's actually crazy. That is actually crazy.
The Chargers are getting a steal here, New. The Chargers are getting a steal. He's 6'2", 210 pounds. What does this Chargers team need more than anything else, New? It needs speed.
Someone who plays, he's not injured all the time.
Don't interrupt my flow, New, with your bad takes, okay? So, yeah, someone that's not injured, fine, right, great, whatever. He hasn't been injured now for 2 years. He
was ACL.
He missed the whole of 2022 because he tore his whole knee off. But he played in 2023 and he's played this year.
On a bad Stanford team.
He tore his ACL, MCL, and meniscus in 2022. So, look, okay, you got to check him out. You got to make sure you're going to pop the hood and check that everything's all right. But this Chargers team needs speed and size more than anything else. Lad McConkey, bona fide star, but he's capped it at what he can do in an offense by himself and with his height and with his weight. So I think adding Alec Imanor, who is a size and speed freak, like I said, 6'2", he ran a 10.76 100-meter in high school. This guy eats up ground for fun. He put Travis Hunter in an absolute blender, went for almost 300 yards, 13 receptions, 3 touchdowns. It could have been even more than that. So I like this guy. Yeah, there's an injury. There's questions about the injury, but I think this guy is almost a watered down Roma Dunze kind of player. He can be exactly what the Chargers need, and I'm going to be pounding the table for Elikai Imanor to the Chargers all draft season long, so get used to it now.
Fine, he ran that 100 meters before he had one knee. That's all I'm going to say, Dom.
23. You hater.
23. So, Dom, we were talking about it in the Packers takeaway video on what our take was from Packers, and they just need superstar talent, and especially a receiver. But unfortunately, I don't see where it's coming from. Maybe Isaiah Bond, I could see coming here.
No way. No. Bond is not a first rounder anymore. I think Savon Williams from TCU is not a bad pick, but
I think you hear, interior O-line, don't see any value there. It's a really hard pick here for the Packers.
Do you see my screen?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I'm not going Trey Harris. Surely not, Tom.
You're a coward. I would have gone Trey Harris.
Fine, let's mix it up. Let's go Trey Harris.
Yes.
Trey Harris has the physical abilities, and to be fair, out of all the receivers there, I think he's probably the best one to go for. He does have that frame, he does have that speed, he's got a limited route tree, and the Ole Miss scheme was very simple. He didn't have to run a very complicated routes, but maybe with the Green Bay Packers offensive scheme, with the other receivers maybe take on more of a prominent role, he can sort of stick to that. So, you know what, Dom? You've convinced me, Trey Harris.
I love Trey Harris in this draft.
Really? Because when we were doing our wide receiver rankings video, you weren't as high.
Because I'm almost a bit high on all of the wide receivers now. I was almost a bit scared to be quite high on them because everything I heard was, it's not a good wide receiver class. And it's not I don't think you have the top tier talent apart from Teteran McMillan. But Trey Harris, I think, has alpha wide receiver 1 potential. This might be a bit of a reach. I'm going to be honest. He's my 30th ranked player. I might have led you down the garden path a bit there, New, and I could have maybe drafted him to one of the wide receiver needy teams later. But I am still very happy with taking him in the first round. My other option, if I'm the Packers, would be to try and trade up if someone like a James Harris or a Mike Green falls. I don't think that's going to happen now, but previously that might have been an option. But the Packers here are in a bit of a no man's land with who's on the board. You're not going to be able to get a dominant edge rusher at pick 23. I mean, you've got the likes of Jack Sawyer, who is a high floor player, sure, but he's not an alpha.
Good game against Texas, Jack Sawyer, as well.
Very good game against Texas, but I don't. The Packers are in a bit of a spot, and I think Trey Harris could be an alpha wide receiver 1. Vikings on the clock at 24. Now they do need a running back because both their running backs are free agents this year, this offseason. It could be an Amari Hampton, but my logic is here is that the running back class is so deep that you can nab a Caleb Johnson, Travion Henderson, Quishon Junkins, name a running back and they'll be available in the second, third round easily. So then it kind of depends for me on what... I think Brian Flores is going to stay as defensive coordinator. It doesn't seem like he's getting loads of head coaching hype at this point, at least. So I'm kind of looking for someone that I think would kind of embody that ability to kind of like play, either anchor the defense or maybe like be a positionally versatile. I'd like Kenneth Grant here. Let's go Kenneth Grant. Defensive interior. It fills a need. I think it's good value at this point. Let's roll on to pick 25 with the Texans now.
Yeah, Dom, quickly on Kenneth Grant. He gets overvalued a lot of the time because of Mason Graham, but still a great player in his own right. With the Texans here, they say receivers in need. Do you remember a couple of drafts ago, I gave them a receiver. I was called catastrophic ball knowledge for giving the Texans a wide receiver. Guess who was proved right? However, I think you've got to go offensive line here, Dom.
Yes,
giving up 8 sacks in the divisional round. We were saying they're not a very well-built team. You really need to improve this offensive line. Let CJ Stroud shine. Let Nico Collins shine. And... Sorry, Dom, would you mind pulling up the tackles here for a second?
Yeah,
Sorry.
absolutely. I mean, I'd be pounding the table for Amar Membu.
Actually, Dom, I'm going to go for, it's slightly ranked low on PFF's board, but high on my board is Cameron Williams, the tackle.
Oh, that I'd be fuming. That is catastrophic ball knowledge.
So that's not catastrophic ball knowledge. I know he had a rough couple games to end the season.
He got dog walked by Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimalara, who aren't even that good.
Well, Jack Sawyer's a first round pick, so let's calm
He'll be a late first round at all. I can't click draft there. I can't.
Oh, Dom, just because someone has a bad game does not mean they're a bad prospect. You've got to value on the
he
body
might go
of
back
work.
To school, no. I don't think he's going to declare.
Well, if he does declare, I believe this is the right pick. He was a top 15 ranked player consistently until he had one bad game and he's dropping down draft boards.
Ariante Ursary is on the board. Amar Membu's on the board. Wyatt Millam's on the board.
I don't know why this Cameron Williams hate is coming. Obviously, that Ohio State game was very bad and on a very, very big stage. But throughout the season, he was amazing, Dom.
That is hideous. I need to find the guy that said you have catastrophic ball knowledge. You can't start the take by being like, someone said I had catastrophic ball knowledge, and then confirm that you have catastrophic ball knowledge. Oh, good grief. Okay, Rams at 26. I think this is the range for the Colston Loveland selection, I think. There's a great cut-up of him going around on socials of basically him just being wide open or potentially making great plays, but his quarterback play just prohibits him from being able to really put those best plays on his tape. The Rams need that kind of player. I think he fits in really well. I would maybe even think that they might try and draft a Matt Stafford replacement. Probably not in the first round, but watch out for the Rams. Maybe draft like a Quinn Ewers. I really wouldn't hate in the later rounds, but I won't be touching him in the first. But I think Colston Loveland there is a straight bat selection, pretty easy. Ravens. 27.
Dom, with the Ravens, again, I mentioned it earlier, all they do is draft best player available, almost regardless of positional need. And I know they took Nate Wiggins last year, but I think Benjamin Morrison has to be the pick. He's too good a prospect to fall out of maybe the first round. I know he has those injury concerns, injured for most of this year, but he's still, in my opinion, a top 20 player. And that's what the Ravens do best. They take the best player available almost always, and it always works out for them.
Yeah, Benjamin Morrison is a player that I really like. He's got a hip injury, so obviously that's quite serious as a cornerback. You want to check that out, and the medicals will, either confirm or deny if he's able to play. But he is he's a corner with great ball skills, 9 interceptions over 2 seasons. He's a refined technician. He does struggle with physicality and press. He's a bit of an inconsistent tackler as well. 2023, 16% missed tackle rate. 2022, 17% missed tackle rate. But yeah, I think they're getting an injury discount with Benjamin Morrison. I think, they did draft Nate Wiggins. They do have Marlon Humphrey. I don't know who the other corner is because Marlon Humphrey's been playing much more in the slot. But
he's also aging, Marlon Humphrey as well. He's especially for a corner.
Yeah,
he's getting slightly older.
Also, I don't know who else I would have gone with here, to be perfectly honest with you. Yeah, they need a wide receiver. They can get that later. Edge, maybe like a Jack Sawyer would be a bit of a Ravens selection. But the final pick, because we're not going to do the teams that are still playing. So we're going to end with this pick 28 with the Lions. what a disappointing end to their season. Honestly, the Lions fans, you must feel sick. So they need interior offensive line, they need edge, and they need linebacker. Oh, okay. This could be. I know PFF kind of hate him now, which I honestly don't hate. But where is he? Oh, hang on. There we go. Where is the Georgia linebacker? Jalen Walker.
Oh no, sorry, Dom. Jihad Campbell, I love, by the way. I'm so high on him.
I like Jihad Campbell too, but I think Jalen Walker will be a first round player, and he kind of fills both needs ish. You know what? Let's go Jalen Walker and let's have a conversation about Jalen Walker, because he's someone that I'm also getting lower on. He's my 24th ranked player. He was like my 13th. So he's 6'2", 245 pounds. He's got an amazing athletic profile, makes him really versatile. He can play off-ball linebacker, QB spy. He can play a bit on the edge. He's good in run and pass defense. They call him a hybrid linebacker, HLB. And he's got hammers for hands, super explosive with his hands. But he's a one-year starter, limited playing time before this year. You're banking on traits, not production. I think some people are going to be really high on Jalen Walker, and I've seen a lot of pushback from where PFF have ranked him as a second round pick, basically. And I think that's a bit low, but I'm also someone that is in the agreement that Jalen Walker is being a bit overrated here. The way I kind of see it is that he's not a full-time edge rusher. He has no pass rush plan. He doesn't have a good stable of pass rush moves, but he's not great in coverage either as a pure off-ball linebacker. So he's kind of like a jack of all trades, master of none, almost. Like, he's a good blitzer, not a good pass rusher. He's explosive, but not that quick. You know, he plays linebacker but can't cover. So it's hard to kind of know where he'll play in the NFL, considering that the Lions have Jack Campbell already. That might allow Jalen Walker to be more versatile, to play kind of a bit more hybrid in that scheme. You know, you've got Aiden Hutchinson off the edge. That will help as well. So I think Jalen Walker would definitely be a player that I could see the Lions drafting if he fell this far. But I'm also someone that's a bit colder on Jalen Walker, I would say.
I tend to agree, Dom, because these hybrid linebackers are not the exact same, but you see, you know, the Jabril Peppers, the Isaiah Simmons.
Yeah, Isaiah Simmons, yeah.
Yeah, those sort of style of, you know, they can do everything. They end up really doing nothing, doing a whole lot of special teams. So I'm always so high on them, because when you watch them, you're like, you could use him, you know, blitz off the edge, drop him into coverage, you can do all these things, and they end up not really being able to do much of it. So I like him as a prospect, and I like him at the end of the first, probably no higher than that for me.
Yeah, I like that. So let's recap then, before we end. So with the first overall pick, the Titans took Cam Ward. With the second pick, the Browns took Abdul Carter. At 3, the Giants took Shadur Sanders. At 4, the Patriots took Will Campbell. At 5, the Jags took Travis Hunter. 6, the Raiders took Tetero McMillan. 7, the Jets took Mason Graham. 8, the Panthers took James Pierce Jr. Love that pick. 9, the Saints took Tyler Warren. Also really like that pick. 10, the Bears took Calvin Banks Jr. 11, the 49ers took Josh Simmons. 12, the Cowboys took Ashton Genty. 13, the Dolphins took Will Johnson. 14, Colts took Mike Green. 15, the Falcons took Luther Burden. 16, the Cardinals took Mikael Williams. 17, the Bengals took Emeka Egbuka. 18, the Seahawks took Josh Conley Jr. 19, the Bucks took Malachi Starks. 20, Broncos, Matthew Golden. 21, Siobhan Revell to the Steelers. 22, the Cardinals. Chargers took Alec Ayamano. 23, Packers took Trey Harris. My goat, man. That I might have catastrophic ball knowledge for that. We'll see. Pick 24, the Vikings took Kenneth Grant. Pick 25, the Texans took Cameron Williams. Yuck. Pick 26, the Rams took Colston Loveland. Pick 27, Ravens took Benjamin Morrison. And finally, pick 28, the Lions took Jalen Walker. As you could hear, I had a lot of opinions as to the good or the
bad, the
badness,
ugly,
essentially, of some of those picks. If you agree or disagree, let us know in the comments. If you think New does have catastrophic ball knowledge, or if you think I have catastrophic ball knowledge, you can let us know. But generally speaking, I think our ball knowledge is quite good. I do think New fumbled the bag with 1 or 2 picks, so go kind on him in the comments. And if you're not already, make sure you're subscribed. We're going to continue to make way more mock draft content for you, way more draft content. We still haven't done our edge rankings or our quarterback rankings. They're going to be coming out very soon. But I've been your host, Dom Corbs. That's been my co-host, Nick Corbs. We've been Unsportsmanlike Conduct. We'll see you on the next one.
See ya.